The moment I had dreamed about my whole life started to fall apart at exactly 2:14 in the afternoon. I was standing at the altar in a dress I had saved for over 3 years. White roses lined every pew. Soft music played from the string quartet near the back wall. 200 guests sat in silk-covered chairs, watching me marry the man I loved. Everything looked exactly the way I had always imagined it. Then my brother Callum stood up. He was sitting in the third row, and when he rose from his seat, the music stopped the way everything stops when someone walks into a room already on fire. He was wearing a dark suit and an expression I had seen before, the one he wore when he believed he had already won something. "I need to stop this," he said loudly. His voice reached the back wall. Every head in the room turned. Phones came up. My mother pressed her hand to her mouth from the front row. Callum pointed directly at me. "She stole money from our father's estate to pay for this wedding. I have proof." The gasps came in waves, one row after another. My fiancé Rowan stood beside me. I felt him go completely still. 200 people stared at me like they already believed it. And I smiled. The smile confused Callum. He had expected tears. He had expected me to stumble over my words or go red in the face. That was always how he won, by catching people off balance and watching them fall. I didn't fall. "Go ahead," I said calmly. "Tell them everything." He blinked once. Then his shoulders straightened, because my calmness looked like guilt to him. It always did. He turned to the guests and spoke in the smooth, practiced tone he used when he needed people to trust him quickly. He said our father had left behind an estate worth nearly $400,000. He said money had gone missing from the estate account. He said I was the only person who could have taken it. He called me selfish. He said I had always put myself first. He said I had used our father's death to fund a lavish wedding while he was left with nothing. Some guests nodded. Others leaned toward each other and whispered behind their hands. I looked at Rowan. He was staring at the floor. His hands were clasped in front of him. He said nothing. Not a single word in my defense. Not one. I turned back to the room and raised my hand. I asked for the microphone. The wedding coordinator, a steady woman named Petra, was standing to the left of the room. I had hired her 9 months ago. 4 weeks ago, I had given her a second set of instructions entirely. I gave her one small nod, the signal we had agreed on. She walked quickly to the sound booth at the back. Within seconds, a large white projection screen lowered from the ceiling above the altar. A projector clicked on and threw a bright white rectangle across it. Callum stopped talking. The guests turned from me to the screen and back again. Confused murmuring moved through the pews like a current. The usher passed me the microphone. I held it the way I hold a pen in a meeting. Firm, comfortable, completely ready. "You said you have proof," I said, looking directly at Callum. "I respect that. So let's do this the right way." I kept my voice level. "Let's show everyone the truth." Callum's eyes moved to the screen, then back to me. Something flickered across his face, the first small sign of uncertainty. It lasted 1 second. Then the first document appeared on the screen. And it was not what anyone in that room expected. The document was a bank transfer receipt. Clean, dated, and 7 months old. It showed a transfer of $12,000 sent from my personal account directly to Callum. I watched his expression shift. He had come here today armed with paperwork. He had not expected me to have my own. "This is a payment I sent you," I said, keeping my voice even. 7 months ago. You called me on a Tuesday night and said you were about to be evicted. You said your landlord had filed the notice already. I paused and let the guests finish reading the screen. "I transferred that money to you within 2 hours of your call." Someone near the back said, "Oh," quietly. A few chairs shifted. Callum recovered fast. He straightened his jacket and let out a short laugh, the kind designed to make the person speaking look foolish for even starting. "That's one transfer," he said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "It doesn't explain where the estate money went. You're trying to redirect this conversation." He opened his hands to the guests. "One bank receipt doesn't tell the whole story." He looked around the room confidently. "I said she stole from our father. That one receipt doesn't change a single word I said. You're right, I said. It doesn't. I looked at Petra. The receipt disappeared. A vertical timeline filled the screen, a list running from 5 years ago to last month. Beside each date was a dollar amount and a short description. Emergency rent, car repossession, medical bills, credit card debt, business loan, utility disconnection, another rent payment, 2 more emergencies after that, 19 entries. For years. A total at the bottom that was larger than most people in that room earned in a year. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The numbers said everything numbers always say. Without emotion, without bias, without the ability to be charmed or talked out of a position. The murmuring in the room changed tone. It grew quieter, more careful. I could see guests reading the screen slowly, moving their eyes down the list one entry at a time. Callum felt the room shift. I watched it happen on his face. That specific moment when a person realizes the audience they walked in with is beginning to recalculate. She owed me every one of those payments, he said firmly. Every single one. She borrowed money from me years ago and never once paid it back. That list proves nothing. He looked straight at me. Ask her what she owed me. I never owed you anything, I said. I kept my voice quiet and flat. Not cold. Just certain. There was no debt. There was no loan I took from you. Not once. What you are looking at on that screen is a record of 19 times I chose to help you. Because you called, because you asked, and because I believed you needed it. A woman in the front row, Rowan's aunt, pressed her lips together and looked at Callum without warmth. Callum reached inside his jacket. He pulled out a folded set of papers and held them up above his head with both hands. I have legal documentation right here, he said, raising his voice to fill the hall. Official signed records showing that money from our father's estate account was authorized and withdrawn by Alara. Her name, her signature, her crime. He walked forward and placed the papers on the edge of the altar table with the confidence of a man who believed the argument was finished. Some guests stood slightly to see better. Others leaned far forward. This was the moment he had been building toward. I could feel the weight of 200 people deciding what to believe. The documents looked official. They were designed to. I picked up the papers from the altar table and turned through them slowly, page by page. Clean columns, formal headings, account numbers, stamped dates. The kind of document built to end an argument before it can begin. I had seen these before. These look very familiar, I said. I held one page up toward the projector camera. The document appeared on the screen, enlarged. Every person in the front half of the room could read it clearly. They look familiar, I continued, because I received copies of these same documents 4 weeks ago. Not from a lawyer. Not from a court. In a message sent directly to my phone at 10 o'clock at night. I set the page back down. The message said that if I did not transfer $30,000 into a private account within 48 hours, these documents would be shown to my fiancé, to every person at this wedding, and sent to the local press. The room was completely silent. Not the polite quiet of a ceremony. The hard, airless quiet of people absorbing something they had not prepared for. I looked out at the faces watching me. Should I show you how he got these documents? I asked. Should I show you exactly how this whole thing began? I picked up my phone from the small table Petra had set beside the altar before the ceremony. I had left it there on purpose. Everything I needed today had been placed in this room on purpose. I opened an audio file and pressed play. Callum's voice came through the speakers. Clear. Unmistakable. Asterisk. Alara. I'm not playing around. You've been ignoring me for 3 weeks. I have documents that will end your marriage before it starts. All I need is $30,000. Pay it, and this goes away. Don't pay it, and every person at your wedding will know exactly what kind of person you really are. You have 48 hours. Asterisk. The recording ended. The room did not move. I watched faces. I saw disbelief. I saw anger building slowly behind it. I saw several people look at Callum with expressions that had not been there 60 seconds ago. Callum stepped forward. His voice came out louder than he meant it to. That is completely out of context, he said. She cut pieces of that together. That is not what that conversation was about. He pointed at me. She twists everything. She always has. His hands were not steady anymore. Before I continue, if you've ever had someone try to break you in public using a lie they built in private, drop a comment right now. Tell me what you did. And if this story is hitting close to home, subscribe. Because what comes next is the part that changes everything. I set the phone down. I let the echo of his recorded voice settle into the room the way smoke settles, slowly, fully, into every corner where it cannot be ignored. Then I stepped away from the podium and walked 2 steps closer to where Callum stood. Not aggressive, not theatrical, just close enough that the space between us became something every person in the room could feel. This was never about the truth, I said. My voice was quiet and controlled. You know that. I know that. And I think most of the people in this room are beginning to understand it now. I held his gaze and didn't look away. This was about control. You have been trying to control what I do with my money, with my choices, with my life since the day I stopped saying yes to you. And when I stopped, you looked for another way in. A few guests shifted in their seats. You did not come here today because you want justice. You came here because I refused to give you $30,000. And standing up at my wedding was your way of making me pay for that. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. Then I turned. Slowly and deliberately. I looked at Rowan, who was still standing at the altar. He had not moved. He had not spoken. Not once. Rowan was watching me with an expression I could not fully name. There was something in his eyes that was not quite surprise. And that absence of surprise, that small, quiet gap where shock should have been, landed in the center of my chest like a stone dropped into still water. I walked toward him. The guests seemed to hold a collective breath. Rowan, I said. I kept my voice gentle. This was not an attack. This was a question that deserved an honest answer. Did you know any of this before today? He opened his mouth. Then he closed it. He looked at the floor. At his hands. At a point somewhere past my left shoulder that was nothing at all. The hesitation lasted 4 seconds. Maybe 5. In a room of 200 people watching every movement on that altar, 5 seconds of silence was not a small thing. It was enormous. Rowan's mother, sitting in the second row, pressed both hands flat against her knees. A woman in the 5th row quietly set her phone down. Rowan looked at me. I didn't know everything, he said. That was not the same as saying no. Every person in that room understood the difference between those 2 answers. Including Rowan. Including me. How much did you know? I asked. Rowan's jaw moved before the words came. Callum came to me, he said. About 3 weeks before the wedding. He said he had concerns. About the estate. About money. He paused, working through it. He said he thought there were irregularities. He said I should know before we got married. He looked at me steadily. I didn't know what to do with it. I wanted to give you the benefit of the doubt. The silence in the room changed again. It became heavier, like the air before a storm when the pressure drops and everything goes still. You didn't tell me, I said. It was not a question. Rowan looked at me directly then. There was something genuine in his expression. Not cruelty, not calculation. The look of a man who had made a decision that felt small at the time and was only now fully feeling how large it had been. I didn't want to upset you before the wedding, he said quietly. I was trying to protect you. By staying silent while my brother planted lies about me in your ear. He had no answer for that. I nodded. Once. Slowly. Not agreement. Understanding. The kind that arrives when the last piece of something you have been building without realizing it finally settles into place and the whole picture becomes clear. I knew he had spoken to you. I said. Rowan looked up. I found out 2 weeks ago. I wasn't searching for it. I was going through some shared wedding planning files on my tablet, and a message thread had synced from an app we both use. 3 messages from Callum to you. 2 replies from you back. Rowan said nothing. I didn't read everything right away, I said. I closed the screen. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I thought about whether to say something, whether to call the whole wedding off, whether any part of what I believed we had was still real. I kept my eyes on his. I decided to wait. I needed to see what Callum would actually do when the day came. I needed to know, not suspect, but know exactly what I was dealing with. From him. And from you. I turned back toward the projector screen. The messages are on that screen. I heard several guests lean forward in their chairs. The room held a focused, careful stillness, the kind that comes when people know something important is about to land. I looked at Rowan one last time. "Do you want to tell everyone what they say?" I asked. "Or would you like me to?" He said nothing. I nodded to Petra. 3 screenshots appeared on the screen. Large and clear. The first was from Callum to Rowan, sent 18 days before the wedding. Asterisk, I need you to hear this from me before someone else tells you. Ilara has been taking money from our father's estate. I've been trying to handle it quietly for her sake. She's not who you think she is. I'm only telling you this because I respect you. Asterisk. Rowan's reply, sent 2 days later. Asterisk, I appreciate you coming to me. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt for now. Let me know if anything more concrete comes up. Asterisk. Callum's final message, sent 5 days after that. Asterisk, I'm working on getting the documentation. Just stay ready. She'll do something with the wedding money that confirms it. Be ready. Asterisk. I waited while the room read. The words be ready landed on faces the way certain phrases do. Slow at first, then all at once, as if the meaning arrives in 2 separate waves. Callum had not come here today to expose a crime. He had come here to execute a plan. One built over weeks. One that required Rowan's silence. One designed not to find the truth, but to destroy something specific. The guests understood now. I could feel it moving through the room like a change in weather. A man near the center of the room raised his hand. The instinctive gesture of someone who needs to understand something before he can sit still. It was Rowan's uncle, a quiet man who had been watching from the 3rd row with the careful expression of someone who evaluates before he speaks. Why? He asked simply. Why would he do all of this? I turned toward him. I appreciated the question. It was the right one. The one everything else had been building toward. Because I stopped giving him money, I said. I said it plainly. No bitterness behind it. No performance. 1 month before this wedding, I told Callum I would not be making any more payments. No emergency transfers. No loans. Nothing. Not because I stopped caring about him, but because I had found something I could not ignore. I let that land for a moment. For 2 years, I had been managing a portion of our father's estate account. My father asked me to when he became too ill to handle it himself. Last month, I sat down to do the final audit before distributing the balance according to the will. I looked at the guests, and what I found changed everything. I paused for 3 full seconds, because someone had been withdrawing money from that account for over a year. I held the silence, and it was not me. Let me tell you about my father. His name was Gerard. He built a catering business from one rented kitchen into a company that employed over 40 people before he stepped back. He was not a wealthy man by most standards, but he was careful and consistent. He saved something every year for 30 years. When he got sick, he called me to his bedside and handed me a folder. Inside was account information, a list of everything he owned, and a note written in his own hand. Take care of this until it's time. I promised him I would. For 2 years, I managed that account carefully. I paid estate taxes, renewed his business insurance while the sale was being arranged, and documented every single transaction. I kept every receipt in a folder of my own. Then 6 weeks ago, I sat down to complete the final audit before distributing the balance according to his will. The numbers did not match. I reviewed the records 3 separate times. Then I hired an independent accountant named Carrie, who had no connection to my family and no reason to favor any outcome. I gave her complete access and 2 weeks. She called me on a Thursday morning. "Ilara," she said. "Someone has been taking money from this account for 14 months. Carrie's report was 22 pages long. 14 months of irregular withdrawals, Some small, $200 or $300 at a time, amounts designed not to trigger alerts. Others were much larger. One for $8,000, another for $6,000, scattered across 14 months in a pattern clearly built to stay invisible for as long as possible. Total removed, $41,200. I stood in my kitchen and read every page twice. There were only 2 people who had ever had authorized access to that estate account. Me, given access directly by my father, and Callum, whose name was added at his own request 2 years earlier when he told my father he wanted to help manage things during the illness. My father had trusted him without hesitation. I had trusted him too. When I confronted Callum quietly, he said the account had errors. He said the bank had made processing mistakes. He said I was misreading the records. Then he stopped returning my calls entirely. 3 days after that, I received the blackmail message. "She's framing me," Callum said now, his voice rising in the hall. "She set all of this up and you're all watching her perform." I looked at him steadily. "Then explain the signature," I said. Petra loaded the next documents onto the screen. These were authorization forms, the paperwork required by the estate bank before any withdrawal above $5,000 could be processed. Each one was supposed to carry my signature, since I was the named account manager. 6 forms. 6 authorizations. $34,000 in total. These signatures were submitted to the bank, I said. The bank processed each withdrawal because the signatures appeared to match my records on file. I turned toward the screen. "But these signatures are not mine." I moved to the next slide. It was a formal report printed on official letterhead from a certified forensic document examiner named Dr. Voss. I had engaged him through my attorney 6 weeks ago. His conclusion was printed in bold at the top of the summary page. Asterisk: the signatures on authorization documents A through F do not match the verified signature samples provided. Evidence of deliberate simulation is present. These documents were not signed by the named account holder. Asterisk. The room absorbed that statement. Not all at once. In stages. The way truth is absorbed when it arrives in a form you were not expecting. First with your eyes, then with the rest of you. Someone near the back of the hall said the word quietly. Forged. I looked at Callum. The room was turning. Fully and completely. Callum's composure was gone. The smooth, polished confidence he had carried into this room, the ease of a man who believed he had every angle covered, had left him completely. What remained was smaller, faster, and cornered. "This is a setup," he said. The words came out tight and rushed. "She built all of this. She hired the examiner. She controls every record in that account. She has been manipulating every person in this room from the second she walked down that aisle." He turned to the guests with his hands spread wide. "I am her brother. I grew up in the same house with this woman. I know what she is capable of. She has been managing our family's money since our father got sick, and none of you can see what she's doing because she's standing there looking calm and composed, and you've decided calm means honest." He pointed at me. "Calm people can lie just as well as desperate ones." He looked around for a face that was still with him. I let him finish completely. Then I said, very quietly, "If I had been building a case against you over months, why would I have waited until today?" I paused. If this was all manufactured, why would I have waited until every person who could possibly serve as a witness was sitting in this exact room? The question settled over the hall. I let it sit for a moment before I answered it myself. "I chose today deliberately," I said. "I want to be honest about that. I knew Callum was planning something at this wedding. I had the blackmail recording. I had the messages he sent to Rowan. I had the forensic report and the account records. I have been building this case for 6 weeks." I paused. I could have gone to the authorities quietly. I could have had this resolved privately, before today, away from every person sitting in this room. I made a different choice. I set the microphone down for a moment. Then I picked it back up. My father always said the truth and has no fear of an audience. He said real things hold up when everyone is watching. I looked at Callum. "You are going to destroy me in public, in front of every person who matters to me. I was not going to let you correct that in a private room with no witnesses. I wanted the truth told the same way you plan to tell the lie. I looked at the guests. In front of everyone. I let that settle. But we are still not done, I said. A man stood up from the third row on the left side of the room. He was in his 60s, with silver at his temples and the specific kind of stillness that belongs to people who have spent years in rooms where important decisions are made. He wore a dark navy suit and carried a leather folder under one arm. His name was Bernard Hale. He had been our father's estate lawyer for 11 years. I had personally invited him to this wedding 4 months ago and told him exactly why he needed to be here. If I may, he said. He walked to the front without hurrying. He opened his folder and addressed the room in the tone of a man who is used to being believed because everything he says is attached to something verifiable. I have been reviewing the estate documentation in connection with an inquiry formally opened 6 weeks ago. I am here today as a witness. He looked up from the page. I have identified 3 specific discrepancies between the authorized estate transactions and the bank withdrawal records. Those discrepancies are consistent with unauthorized account access. He turned one page. All 3 discrepancies trace directly back to actions initiated through Callum Gerard Whitmore's account credentials. Callum's mouth opened. Nothing came out. He's lying, Callum said. His voice came out rough and uneven. Bernard works for her. She has controlled him the same way she controls everything. She has been planning this since before our father was even in the ground. He turned to the room with his hands open. Has anyone here ever seen me be dishonest? In my whole life, I run a legitimate business. I have been part of this community for years. Ask anyone who actually knows me. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, but the nods that had followed his earlier words were not there anymore. Bernard did not react. He simply opened to a second page and set it on the altar table without rushing or raising his voice. These records were obtained independently from the estate bank, he said. They were not provided by Elara. They were formally requested 6 weeks ago, before she contacted me. He looked at Callum with the calm expression of a man who has watched people argue with documented evidence many times before. These records existed before Elara came to me. They will continue to exist long after today. He closed the folder. I looked at the guests. There is one thing I have not shown yet, I said. I did not speak immediately. I let the room settle the way a room settles after something heavy has been said, while people are still catching up to exactly where they are standing now. Callum was very still. The performance had left him entirely. What remained was a man watching his audience step back one face at a time, unable to stop it. Rowan was standing a few feet to my left, slightly back from where he had been at the start of the ceremony. He had moved there without appearing to realize it, that small, unconscious step backward that people take when they are no longer certain which direction is the right one. I noticed it. I noticed everything. My mother sat in the front row with her hands folded in her lap, her face carrying the specific expression of a woman who has been afraid of a truth for a long time and is only now being allowed to fully feel it. Rowan's uncle had not moved from the third row. He was still watching me with that careful, measuring look he had kept from the very beginning. The hall was waiting. I looked toward the side door. I didn't come here alone today, I said. The side door opened. 2 people walked in, a man and a woman, both dressed in dark clothing, both holding open identification folders as they crossed the threshold. They moved with the measured, practiced calm of people who do difficult things in very public places for a living. The woman spoke first. My name is Investigator Cole, and this is my colleague Investigator Marsh. We are from the Financial Crimes Unit. The room made a sound I had never heard from a group of people before. Not quite a gasp, not quite a murmur. Something between the two. The sound of 200 people adjusting all at once to a new and much larger understanding of what they were witnessing. We are here in connection with an active investigation into fraudulent estate transactions, document forgery, and an extortion attempt related to the estate of Gerard Whitmore, deceased. She looked at Callum directly. Mr. Whitmore, you are aware this investigation exists. It was not a question. I stepped slightly to the side, creating clear space between myself and Callum. I had spent 6 weeks building the file that had brought these 2 people into this hall today. Document by document, Recording by recording. Account statement by account statement. I had known since the night I received the blackmail message exactly where this had to end. I had made sure it ended here. Investigator Cole opened her folder and addressed the room. The investigation was formally opened 5 weeks ago following a report filed by the estate account manager, Alara Whitmore. Since that time, we have reviewed 14 months of transaction records, analyzed 6 authorization documents, and received a certified forensic report on the signatures attached to those documents. She paused and turned a page. The evidence establishes that Callum Gerard Whitmore accessed the estate account using falsified authorization forms bearing a forged version of Alara Whitmore's signature. The total amount removed without authorization is $41,200. She turned another page. In addition, a recorded extortion attempt has been submitted as evidence. A voice message sent to Alara Whitmore demanding $30,000 in exchange for suppressing fabricated documents. She closed the folder. This is not the first time Mr. Whitmore has faced allegations of this nature. 2 prior complaints filed by separate individuals in 2019 and 2021 are included in the current review. Callum turned away from the investigators. His eyes swept the room once, searching. Then they landed on Rowan. His voice came out thin and fraying. Rowan. He stepped forward. You know who I am. You've known me for 3 years. Tell them who I am. He was not speaking to the investigators anymore. He was begging. Rowan looked at Callum for a long moment. Then he turned to me. And for the first time since Callum had stood up and the afternoon had shifted sideways, I saw something clear and unambiguous in Rowan's face. Not rage. Not relief. The expression of a man who had just fully felt the weight of what he had chosen not to tell me, and who understood, now and completely, what that silence had cost both of us. He took one step back, not toward Callum, away from him. That was his answer. I turned to the room. 200 people sat watching me. Some of them loved me. Some of them barely knew me. All of them had witnessed something they would not forget. I picked up the microphone one final time. I came here today planning to get married, I said. I also came knowing I might have to make a different choice. I looked at Rowan directly and honestly. Trust is the foundation of everything. And what I learned today is that ours had a crack I didn't put there, but that I also didn't deserve. I set the microphone down. The investigators moved toward Callum quietly and without drama. I picked up my bouquet from the altar table. I walked toward the side door, the one that led to the afternoon light outside. Steady steps, head level, the same way I had practiced walking down this aisle. At the door, I paused. My father always said the truth doesn't need to be loud to be real. I stepped outside. I was whole. I was free. I had nothing left to prove. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. I will see you all in the next video.